Hi, my name is Steve Harden. I'm the CEO and founder of LifeWings. I'm also the chief facilitator in the TMA Physician Leadership Lab. I'd like to talk to you today about choosing an improvement project to do during the course of the lab. One of the reasons we call it a leadership lab is because we want it to be an experiential process for you. We want you to actually have an opportunity to practice what you're going to learn during the lab doing an improvement project. One of our mottos is, if you want to learn to lead, the best way to do that is to actually go lead, right? And the vehicle for you to actually go lead is an improvement project in your organization while you're participating in the leadership lab. Now, if you think this through, choosing the right project for your physician leadership lab is really important. It can make a huge difference in whether you find the lab valuable and you get the most that the lab can offer, or whether it's less than a great experience, where you have to choose wisely in the improvement project that you're going to do during the lab. So, along those lines, I have 7 things for you to think about as you choose that improvement project you want to do as a part of your leadership lab experience. Point number 1 is, whatever project you choose, make sure that it is within your control, right? Make sure it is a project that is within your organization, and whatever resources, whatever personnel, whatever staff, whatever time that you're going to need to make this project successful, you either have influence over, access to, or control over. For example, last year we had a medical director from a labor delivery unit in the laboratory, and she chose as her project increasing the number of mothers and babies that had skin-to-skin contact immediately after delivery. Now, this is one of the core quality measures in a labor delivery unit, and it was appropriate for her to choose it. Also appropriate because, as the medical director, she had influence over the resources that she would need to make this a successful project. Now, what she didn't do was choose either a core measure or a patient safety measure or a patient experience measure that would have affected the whole hospital or the whole healthcare system that her hospital was a part of, because she wouldn't have had access to the resources necessary or control or influence over the resources necessary to make that project a success. So whatever project you choose, make sure that you have influence, access, or control over the resources you're going to need to be successful in that project. So that takes us to point number 2. So point number 1 was make sure it's within your control. Point number 2 is make sure that the project you choose is meaningful to either your patients or your staff and your colleagues. And it would really be good if whatever you choose is meaningful to both your patients and your staff and your colleagues. So if we look at the project that Heather chose last year on skin-to-skin contact, that satisfied both of those, right? It was really meaningful to the mother, to the child, to the families of the mothers. And so it was definitely meaningful to the patients. It was also meaningful to her staff, because that's a core measure by which they measure the quality of the care they're providing. And they really felt a lot better being able to improve that measure, right? So it was meaningful to both. You're going to spend a lot of time and effort on this improvement project. It's going to take a lot of your resources, a lot of your thought processes, a lot of extra time which you don't have, and you might as well do something that's going to be meaningful and make a difference. Or as I like to say, hey, choose something that makes a dent in the universe, makes the world a better place than you found it, right? So you spend so much time and effort on the project, you might as well choose something that's worth climbing to the top of that mountain for. So that brings us to point number 3 about choosing your project is, make sure that your project is measurable, right? You ought to be able to quantify the outcome. If we look at Heather's project last year, it's easy to quantify the number of mothers and babies that have skin-to-skin contact. You know, that's a number that you can see in a data plot, right? So whatever project you choose needs to be measurable, needs to be quantifiable. listen, I want you to think about the project with the end game in mind. At the end of the project, you'd like to be able to produce a piece of data that says, hey, we were here when we started, and when we finished, we were up here, right? So that gives meaning to what you've accomplished and gives meaning to all the time and effort that you put into it. And you can document your success. Now, another reason that we want your projects to be measurable is that's how we're going to describe your projects. You'll hear more about this in the first webinar, and certainly we'll do a lot of work around this in the live workshop. But how we're going to describe your projects is using a sentence like this. We're going to improve something, right? We'll call that Z. We're going to improve skin-to-skin contact. We're going to improve nursing retention. We're going to improve room turnover. We're going to reduce the number of serious safety events. So whatever that number, whatever that project is, that's going to go in that first blank. That represents C. And we're going to improve that from X. X is where it is now. And we're going to get it to Y. Y is our desired result, right? And we're going to get that done by such and such a date. So we're going to put a time limit on ourselves. And so you can see right away, whatever project that you choose, it really needs to be quantifiable. Otherwise, this way of describing your project is just not going to work, right? So this leads us into point number 4, is that whatever project you choose has to be doable within about 6 months, right? So the lab's going to be wrapping up somewhere around mid to late July. So you really need to choose a project where you can get a quick win and you can put the resources and the team and the processes in place so that you can see results within about 6 months, okay? That takes us down to characteristic number 5, and that whatever project you choose really needs to be process driven, right? So by process driven, what we mean is we don't want you to choose a project that you could change and get the results you want just by implementing a new policy, right? That kind of defeats the purpose. A huge part of being in the Physician Leadership Lab is learning how to lead the science of process improvement, how to develop that process improvement muscle. And another reason that that's so important to us is whatever result you achieve as a result of your improvement project, that result is not going to be sustainable unless there's a process involved, because processes build habits, right? So eventually you're going to go on and turn your attention to something else, and you want those results to be sustainable from your project. And the only way that's going to happen is if people are doing, acting, behaving in a certain way because of habit, the habits, the behaviors that got the results that you wanted, right? And as leaders, we really need to know how to lead process improvement. So we need to choose a project that is process driven, right? And this takes us down to the 6th characteristic, is that whatever project you choose, it should really be team driven, right? So you don't want to choose a project where you could get the results you want by yourself, right? Being a team leader presupposes that there is a team to follow you, right? So this is a leadership lab. You're a leader. Leader presupposes there are followers, and we want you to have the opportunity to practice those leadership skills, working with followers, working with your team to build processes which are going to get you the desired results. That's really the essence of leadership. Can you take the organization from point A, where it is now, to point B, where it needs to be? And the best route from point A to point B is going to be process driven, and the process is going to take the work of the entire team to make it happen, right? So choose a project that is going to require the work of a team, something that you can't do just by yourself, right? You won't get the full value of the leadership lab if you do that. And so that takes us down to our last point, which is stay flexible, right? It is not uncommon. In fact, I predict this will happen to you, that whatever project you think you're going to do on day one of the Leadership Lab will probably not end up being the project that you actually do, right? So as you learn more about the skills required to move the organization from point A to point B, and those skill sets become more clear to you, you're going to realize that, hey, the project you thought you wanted to do is probably not as appropriate as it looked in the beginning. You know, maybe it's not as measurable as you thought, or maybe it's not as process driven as you thought, or maybe you don't need a team to make it happen. And so you may change, and likely will change, the project that you're going to choose, but you got to start somewhere, all right? So throw some mud on the wall, pick a project. We'll work with you to make sure it's the right project, because it's so important to what you get out of the Leadership Lab. Hey, last year we had a cardiologist from East Tennessee who changed his project 5 times. We were in month 4 of the Leadership Lab before he finally settled on a project. And when he did, it was the perfect project. And that's not only changed his practice, it actually changed the quality of the care given in his hospital. And as I told him, I said, Jack, this project is so good, if you would share it nationally, it would change cardiology care throughout the entire United States. Well, that didn't happen overnight, right? So he was a little frustrated in the beginning because he just couldn't find the right project to do, but he just kept at it, just kept applying these criteria. And at the 4-month mark, had that eureka moment and picked the perfect project. So stay flexible. It may not end up being exactly the project you thought you were going to do when you started, but that's okay. All right. So if you have any questions about these 7 characteristics of a good project for the Leadership Lab, email me, call me. My numbers are on the screen. I am more than happy to sit down and work through these with you. I'll work through them, all these issues with you during the live workshop, and we'll make sure that you're on track with your projects. Hey, I really look forward to meeting you. I love doing these Leadership Labs. They're one of the most enjoyable things I do in my life. We're going to have a lot of fun together. We'll get a lot of work accomplished. And at the end of it, we're going to look back and we're going to say, hey, we really did make a dent in the universe. We left the world a little bit better place than we found it. So I look forward to getting started. Call me or email me if you have questions, and I'll see you soon.